Welcome. Thank you for being here at 10 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and start on time because I'm like that. My name is Greg Gagnon. I'm the moderator of this post. Tanks, planes, boats, and Crayon Eaters or something like that. And the official description of this is, tell us why your branch is the best branch of the military other than the Marines. Because we already know the Marines are the best branch of the military.
The Marines are a cult.
Well, and so I was going to start off with a couple of the common jokes. One of which is there are really only a couple of branches of the military: the Army and the Navy. The Air Force is a corporation. The Marine Corps is a cult. And so let's start with that. First of all, where does the Space Force fit in with this? I would describe them as another corporation. And how do you feel about the truth of the rest of that statement?
So Space Force is a subsidiary of SpaceX. Elon Musk will be buying 100% shares and doing the hostile takeover soon. What was the other part of that question?
How do you feel about the rest of the description?
As far as Marine Corps being a cult,
and the Army being the military, the Army and the Navy.
So a statistic I like is that if Walmart was a military organization, they would be the second largest military in the world. I like that because the Army is kind of like the Walmart of the military. They do a little bit of everything. The quality, but we got everything. I mean, whatever you want, we got it. So.
My name's Pat. I'm a recovering Marine. My favorite flavor of crayon is red.
Hi, Pat.
Yeah, the Marine Corps is a little bit of a cult, but it works. There's I think my favorite joke is, well, isn't it just another department of the Navy? Yeah, the men's department. Oh, come on, y'all.
It's early. We're working hard up here.
I'll be here all day. Try the veal. But it's small. It is kind of the redheaded stepchild of the Navy when it comes to budget allocations, and tends to get the hand-me-downs. Some things they've done to themselves. Like, I've been out for 30 years now, and I was in the Air Wing. They're still flying the same model F-18 Hornets that they had when I got out 30 years ago. And that's because they put all their eggs in the F-35 basket, and that took a lot longer to come to fruition than they planned on. Yeah, so I mean, it's like Battlestar Galactica level stuff where they've actually rated museum piece Hornets for parts. So, like I said, they kind of did that to themselves. The cult aspect, I think, comes from there is a warrior mentality, and and it's not just mindless cannon fodder. They aggressively push that level of competence throughout the Corps. And there's some differences and variations in how seriously people take it. Like within the Marine Corps, the Air Wing's got a reputation for being a bunch of slackers. And compared to the infantry, we were. But still,
Everyone wants that 18 overhead.
Yeah, and
Shit starts flying.
Richard, when we get down to you, since I forgot to have people introduce themselves.
Oh, I was going to.
Would you be kind enough, and we'll pass it back this way.
All right.
That's all my thoughts for now. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm Mike Morton. I'm retired Air Force, but I was space operations while I was in the Air Force, and now I work for the Space Force as a civilian. First, my opinion on the other services. Despite being in the Air Force still thinks they won World War II with strategic bombing.
It's part of the Army.
There is a very valid reason why the Space Force was created, and that is to get out from underneath the pilots in the Air Force, because
So you don't share the budget with the F-35s?
We do.
You still do?
Well, no, not anymore.
Exactly.
But that was why. It's because every major proposal that we wanted to do that wasn't a spy satellite or a communication satellite was scrutinized very heavily or negatively against aircraft. And so, for once, Congress actually recognized that and they pushed it through. So while we are part of the Air Force, we're a department. You have the Department of the Air Force, and then you have the Air Force and the Space Force, just like you have with the Navy and the Marine Corps. But we have our own acquisition chain, so at least we can avoid being underneath the pilots. We still have to compete against them at the OSD level, but at least it's more of a level playing field. The Navy is, I know there's a lot of sour grapes amongst science fiction fans that the Navy did not get the Space Force. I'm here to tell you, the Navy did not want the Space Force. They could not wait to divest themselves of all of their space assets and give it over to us. Because why? It's not ships. And that's what the Navy is all about, is ships. The Army, you can't spell joint, or you do spell joint, A-R-M-Y. And that's a problem in the Air Force and the Space Force, that they don't train mission command and planning like the Army does. So they are the top guys when it comes to joint operations, because the Army, I think, has spent a lot of time, a lot of blood and sweat teaching their guys how to think joint. So of all the services, I'd say the Army probably has the best concept of trying to pull everyone together in a fight, of course, as long as the Army's leading it. And then the Marine Corps, I have a brother-in-law who's a Marine. I have my cousin who was married to a Marine. I've worked with Marines. Yes, they are a cult, and they are the cult we need, because their enemies are America's enemies, and there's no better thing turning a Marine loose on the enemy. That's my thoughts.
All right. My name is Richard Hailey, U.S. Navy, 1984 to 1993. I was a nuclear reactor operator for 4 years and a radiation control ship supervisor for the last 3 years. As far as the relationship between the different branches, the Army is like the Swiss Army knife. It's kind of interesting. It can do a lot of stuff, but not really, really well. If you want a real knife, you get the Marines. They kill people, break things. They do it really well. That's all they do, and it's a beautiful thing to see them in action. As y'all said, they do work for the Navy, so there you go with that. Space Force is very cool. They can do all the admin they want to when they need pilots. Where do they come to? Navy. More astronauts have gone to space from the Navy than any other service. And as far, we've left out the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about the Coast Guard, and I think we can just leave it there. When it gets back to me, I will talk about the Coast Guard.
All right.
So go ahead. You've given your military background. Talk about, this is only tangentially about writing, despite being at FantaSci. There's nothing about writing in the, but we do want to mention, what have you written, what do you write? And then send it back this way, and when it gets to me, we'll start another round. Okay. I write primarily fantasy, epic fantasy, and my one published short story so far, yay me, was a noir mashup detective story plus werewolves, which was kind of cool. That was in Talons and Talismans too, if you want to look it up, and there's more coming.
So I write military science fiction and fantasy, and then if you saw me yesterday wearing my JTF-13 shirt, that's military supernatural. I tend not to write about Space Force because I know too many things that would get me in trouble if I did. So I stick to either the far future or the weird stuff that happens on the fringes at the Marines.
Yeah, I write hard science fiction with Baen, and my sci-fi is in the near future with a technothriller twist. I kind of, when I first started writing, I approached it as I really loved the 80s Cold War technothrillers. So if Tom Clancy wrote sci-fi, what would that look like? And that's kind of the way that I approach it. This is my latest book with Baen, Escape Orbit. It's coming out April 4th. And my books follow two tracks. They kind of occur in the same universe. There's some character crossover. This is kind of the big idea, sci-fi track. My other book with them, Frontier, is more of the military action adventure track. And that actually, Frontier is that came out last year. That's actually about the Space Force, projected maybe 20 years into the future. And it's being hopeful, seeing how much cannot happen in 20 years. But I strongly believe as civilian spaceflight becomes more routine, we're eventually going to need some kind of Korsgaard type search and rescue, protecting lanes of navigation type ability in space. And they're going to do that. That's going to require ships that have a lot of delta V, which means nuclear thermal propulsion, in my opinion, and really cool weapons. Rail guns, stuff like that. So.
What do you need weapons for? You just rescuing lost spacers.
Because sometimes there's bad guys. So
Guys in space?
well, the other
You can repurpose them to deorbit things too.
well, yeah, part of it is clearing. Part of it is clearing things that are a threat to other things. But the other, and I won't take up any more time than this. The other aspect I explore is the kind of great power struggles that we have now, like China throwing their weight around the South China Sea, claiming territory that's not really theirs. As we expand our economic sphere out into space, those kind of struggles are going to follow. So what might that look like?
Yeah.
So just like Coast Guard cutters do search and rescue, but they've got 5-inch guns on deck, right? And things like that. I needed weapons for the story. Here's the bottom line.
I don't know, you just gotta point your aft end at the bad guy. There's a weapon right there.
Yeah, if you're close enough, yeah.
Now we're back to talking to Coast Guard.
On that note, I'm Kal Spriggs. I'm a U.S. Army combat veteran. I've been in 3 sub-branches of the Army, so to speak. I've been active duty for 9 years. Was a reservist part-timer for 4 years, and now I'm back kind of in the middle as an AGR, where I work with reservists, train reservists, and try and support the active component while shaking my head. For my background as far as writing, I write military sci-fi, urban fantasy, epic fantasy, zombie books, a whole lot of different stuff. I have 11 different series, 36 novels and counting.
So my name's Greg Gagnon. I started in the Marine Reserve as honestly a scout sniper. I am not a school-trained scout sniper. I am not one of the 7,000 Vietnam veteran scout snipers, of which there were 300.
Yeah.
300 or 400. That's if you're a Marine, that's the thing that you get. The other one is I was a SEAL. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Jocko Willink said of the 600 SEALs.
He's
I've known 3,000. I've met 3,000 of them.
Exactly. So anyway, went from there to the National Guard. I was working for a sheriff's office at the time. Being an MP seemed like a good idea. Ended up 12 years in the active army doing that in Germany and the U.S. and Haiti. So I write a little bit, and I'm writing more, so hopefully there will be more stuff next time you see me at a convention. Our first one is coming out in the second postcards book from Raconteur Press. And so now we're going to talk about, because this is not really about writing per se, but we do want to give you some background, and some of it is hopefully humorous. And I'm going to start with this. Do you have a recruiting pitch for when kids come to you and say, I'm thinking about joining the military? And while you're thinking about that, I'll talk a little bit about the Coast Guard. Coast Guard is an underappreciated branch of the military. And part of that is because we have to kind of decide whether they're military or not, which is, how do you define it? They're a uniformed service. They have both a peacetime and a combat mission. So I would argue, yes, they are. They do more real work than most of the rest of us on any given day. Even though they're smaller, they have a significant right now job. And
Enlisted guys do more work than officers.
well, yeah, that's not any different. But they do a lot of good stuff. I was a policeman. I worked for the Harbor Police. We overlap a lot with the Coast Guard. So watching them do the interdiction stuff was really cool. But that's not, fighting the enemy is not their primary mental focus.
Law enforcement.
It's more about law enforcement, and then you have the rescue folks. Rescue is its own whole thing, no matter where you are. So I've done a bunch of SAR stuff, search and rescue stuff. In our location, it's done with the sheriff's office. So I've done a lot of support stuff with them. And that's just a whole different mentality from everything else. So, yep, they have a good one. So my recruiting pitch, if you're not sure what you want to do and you want the widest range of opportunities, where do we go?
Army.
The Army.
It's
Hands down, they do more different things. Now, you may or may not be able to get to where you're intending to go, but the options are there.
The Army,
That's
where no other
understood.
service can you be on the air, the land, or the sea.
Unless you're a
They have
Marine.
more boats than the Navy. They have more airframes than the Air Force. They have and the Navy. They have space operations guys, so they do satellite stuff. They do everything.
Yeah.
It's Burger King of
Oh.
military services.
And-
We're taking a lot of that away from them.
But they still have it.
And Rich does the only job that I think should exist in the Navy, because I tell people if they want to be a nuke tech, or if they want to be on submarines, that's when you go to the Navy. If you want to be in the real military, where do you go?
Marine Corps. You know, I tell people that, I mean, I've had this opportunity a few times. Think about what you think you want to do, you know, and if you're not sure, I think you're right. I think the Army's a good choice. I mean, obviously, I think the Marine Corps is a good choice, but that is something you need to be mentally committed to. You know, if you want to be part of that, you know, warrior, poet, cult, or whatever, you know, but would always know the focus is going to be on the infantry. You know, even if you're in the air wing, you know, you have to do a certain amount of infantry training. I think everybody goes to infantry school now after boot camp.
Yep, BCT.
Yep, and when I was in, we had to do a certain amount of ground combat, you know, infantry type training every year.
Every Marine
Yeah.
rifleman.
And every Marine a janitor too.
Well,
Yeah,
that is kind of universal. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure.
yeah. No, 30 years later, I still.
Space Force may have contracts. I don't know yet.
Well, but honestly, it does depend. If you have some direction that you want to go, like I totally agree about the Navy with nuke techs, and I actually write that into my books. I feel like as we get serious about long duration space flight, it's going to look a lot more like a submarine crew than a bomber crew. You're going to need pilots to a certain extent because you know.
Yeah,
As much as-
understands that three-dimensional.
You're saying-
Yeah, and can rapid fire, you know, make rapid fire decisions, you know, that cannot wait. You know, now there's some of that, you know, I'm sure in the nuclear world also.
Oh, yeah.
But you can probably tell where I'm going with this. I feel like it's going to look a lot more like that than
You're saying there's not going to be a door gunner on a space shuttle?
I wish.
I'm still listening to him say Marines should be committed, and I'm like, yeah,
Yes. Next question.
Yeah, it is a mentality they feed into your head in basic, but yeah, it really does depend on what you think you want to do. And I would have to agree if if someone isn't sure, the Army's probably a good way to go.
So I went to the Merchant Marine Academy, which is unique of all the Federal Service academies. That you could go any branch. You could at the time there was no Space Force, but you could go Air Force, you could go Navy, you could go whatever. So I have classmates who went. They actually have more Navy flight slots than Annapolis does, with a class size of 200. So you have a better chance of being a naval aviator going to the Merchant Marine Academy than you do Annapolis, at least when I graduated. I have a rather unique perspective. I have classmates in all the branches, and I was given a choice as I came up to commissioning. I could have done any of them, and I have a classmate who did the same MOS essentially in the Marine Corps as me, and we ended up in Iraq at the same time. We were both combat engineer officers, and as a perspective on the Marines. He came back. We were in the same place at the same time, and we're sitting there bullshitting. And he's like, "Yeah, we were checking this area for chemical munitions because it was Saddam Hussein buried some in this spot." And don't worry, there's totally no chemical weapons. So
Despite what the VA says about
yeah,
ongoing injuries.
So his platoon is out there with no protection, going across this field in the desert with metal detectors. And one of the guys starts twitching, falls over, foaming at the mouth. They get him out, they atropine him. Okay, yeah, we got him, we medevac him. And I'm like, oh shit, so you guys found it and you secured the site? Well, no, we had to verify where it was, so we went back out. And I'm like, you went back out after the guy started foaming at the mouth? Yeah, we had to find where it was. Did you put on mock gear? No, it was hot. We just went out and... Did you find it? Well, we had 2 more guys go down. Like both at the same time? No, one went down, so we got him out. We got him on a bird and got him back, and then we went out and another guy went down. And that's how we triangulated where these things were. And I'm like, you had 3 guys go down to a nerve agent, one after the other, and you kept going back. It's like, well, yeah, we had to find it. And that's the Marine mentality.
I drank VX gas for breakfast.
Versus the Army mentality of, okay, we found it, it's in this area, let's use the robots. So.
Oh, good. Well, the problem is the Marines probably didn't have the dang robots.
No, they did.
Oh, seriously?
They did.
So
And he called it up to his company commander. His company commander was like, well, triangulate where it is and then we'll use it. So they triangulated with their bodies.
They probably only had the one robot that's more valuable than all the other Marines.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
My squadron sent me to, I don't know what they call it now, but back then it was NBC, nuclear biochemical. They sent me an NBC warfare course so I could be the squadron NBC defense coordinator. And this all happened about a month before the first Gulf War kick. It was like July of '90. You know, a month later.
Which is a great time to be doing that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's been in 2 weeks, you know,
I did
stomping around in mock gear.
I did hazmat in August at Fort Polk.
Yeah, and, you know, so a month after that, it's all of a sudden, oh, I got to really put this stuff into practice now, because we were using Iraq as case studies in that course.
And speaking to the camera here, if you want to do something fun and excited in the military, don't be a Seaburn officer or NCO. Do not do it. You'll be miserable. Everyone hates you. You're the guy who has to tell them to put all the heavy shit on. You're the guy who sits there and cleans stuff after. Don't do it.
And tell the camera what's
Anything but that. Chemical, biological, nuclear, radiological, and they had an E as well.
High explosive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it went from CBR to NBC and then back to CBR.
Saberni. Don't do it.
So I guess I'll make the pitch for the Air Force and the Space Force. On the Air Force side, if you want to fly or be flying adjacent, obviously a great place to go. I will also say that if you are in construction and like construction, the Air Force is a great place for that. They have these units, they're called Red Horse, which stands for Rapid Engineer Deployable Heavy operational. I can't remember all
Yeah,
of it.
no one ever remembers what it stands for.
But
Red
these
Horse and Prince.
yeah, these guys are the ones that go forward and either build or repair airfields. And there is no better training, and I think Mike Williamson will say, there's no better training on how to do construction techniques than to have to go and build something from nothing and do it in some of the worst conditions available. So that's the Air Force side. On the Space Force side, I will say now, geeks and nerds now have a home in the military. The Space Force is actively recruiting people with STEM education already, and will send people for STEM education if they want it. We're looking for the teenagers now in the modern world who are used to interacting through a computer screen and who are used to thinking worldwide as they interact, because everything we do is for users all around the world, and our stuff is not in any one particular theater, but it's orbiting the Earth. It's in all the theaters. So you have to be able to think globally.
Space is the name. It's not
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
So I will say this for the Space Force, I love the dress uniforms, the Battlestar Galactica style flap they have.
The flap, yeah.
Yeah, because if you're gonna do it, own it, man.
Yeah.
All they need is good pants.
Yeah, the current chief of space operations, Chance Saltzman, I worked with him back when he was at 05 in California, and I can see, because he was the chief of operations at the time, so that basically the third in command of the Space Force when the uniform was approved, and he's always had a flair for the dramatic, so I could see his hand in that. I don't know if it was actually true or not, but he wears it pretty well.
So let's talk about uniforms.
Well, hold on.
Oh, well, I still got to make the pitch for the Navy.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
I thought
so,
it was join the Navy if you want to be a nuke deck.
Well, that's what they said. They've missed a whole lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because here's the pitch for the Navy. If you want to spend 20 years in service and then go to work at Burger King, Cal's right. Army is your place. Okay? If you want to sweep out a missile silo, then the Air Force is your home. That's where you go.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to kill people and break things, the Marines will love having you. Now, if you want to actually get into some high-tech careers, some things that might actually pay some money, come talk to us here in the Navy. Yes, we do the nuclear reactors, but we also do all sorts of good high-tech fun stuff. And in the meantime, we go to some of the most beautiful countries in the world, and we pull into the shittiest ports and hang out there.
And remember, kids, it's not gay if you're underway.
That is a true statement.
It's not clear if you're away from the pier.
It's kind of funny. The joke, especially in the submarine
Going
corps,
downhill
is
fast.
150 sailors go out, 75 happy couples come back. There is no truth to that. There's also, don't drop the soap in the shower on a submarine. If you've been on a submarine, you know it is impossible to drop the soap in the shower because the shower is about yay big. And to take a shower, you go in, you soap down the walls, you get in, you spin around, and then you come back out. Okay, the shower is actually the safest place on a sub. And on that note,
On that note,
Oh, now we're all sitting here contemplating everything you just said.
yes, we are.
We're sitting there like, wait a minute, that's a pitch for the Navy?
If you want to sleep on top of torpedoes
yes.
in a bunk that's only 16 inches high.
Stop, I can only get so right.
You do.
Have any of y'all heard the phrase hot racking?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So for again, you out in video space, hot racking is where you get to share your rack with someone else depending on what shift you're on.
Yeah, not at the same time.
No.
Just being real
Right.
clear about
You
that.
can't fit two people in one of the Navy
But-
racks.
Yeah, that for me is a turnoff. There's so much about this stuff, especially the submarine service, I think is really cool. I mean, I've heard it said, I use this as a line for one of my characters because it was too good, but the reason I joined the submarine service is Starfleet's not hiring yet.
Yeah. I did not go submarines. I was on an aircraft carrier because I like to be able to stand up. If you're more than about 5'9" on a submarine, this is how you come out.
So let's talk about uniforms. Since we started talking about uniforms, we all know that the dress codes are the best.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm the impartial moderator.
Culture
Well,
guards.
let's
But-
talk combat
but-
uniforms uniforms too. Because there really is only one uniform now, and that's back to, well, technically there's two, because the Marines have theirs, Army has theirs, and then everybody else adopted
Yeah,
theirs.
the Marines
Yeah.
patented their camo pattern, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yes,
Mark
it
had-
is.
yeah,
Mark
Mark
had
Unbelievable.
his patented. But
First smart thing
I have
done.
to say, the pink and greens are
Pinks
so
and
much,
greens are back.
so much better looking
It-
than what we had.
It only took 10 years to capitalize on Captain America wearing pinks and greens. I mean, come on, guys. Jesus.
I do have a
That's
question
fast
about
for the
that,
Army.
and I don't understand why in the hell the Navy went to camo uniforms.
Well, first they went to the blue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because that was a cost savings thing. If someone falls overboard, you can't find them, and then you don't have to waste
I was gonna
time
say,
and money
yeah.
driving around to find them.
Yeah.
So that was a cost savings thing.
I was down in Norfolk the first time I saw them, and I was like, what are they doing?
You've never seen someone more embarrassed to wear a uniform.
Then again, we've got our choker whites,
Yeah.
and those are sharp.
yeah, those
And the-
whites are.
The,
those
the
whites are
officers.
cool.
The dungarees. were-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going to the Marine Corps Ball, I was a Marine. My wife works for the Marines and has for the last several years. And we live right outside of Quantico, so I get to go to the ball again. This past year, we got to go with our son, which was pretty awesome, because he's stationed in Norfolk now. But that's the only place I feel underdressed in a tux. And this is true of all of the services. I mean, the dress blues, for standard uniforms, I would say it's the dress blues and the pink and greens, and then the others. I'm not familiar enough with the Space Force standard dress uniform.
That's the one that Patrick was talking about.
Right, but I don't
Yeah.
really have a visual image of it because I haven't been exposed to
Have you seen Battlestar Galactica?
It looks
the
a
new one?
lot like
It's that.
it. No, I haven't.
Yeah, the reboot Battlestar Galactica, it looks like their dress uniforms with the, I don't even know what you call that flap with the
Yeah.
button, but yeah.
But the other thing I'll say is, once you start getting into the senior NCO ranks or into the officer ranks and you start looking at the mess dress uniforms, a bunch of those are sharp-looking uniforms and look like they would be appropriate for a space opera kind of Navy.
That's like that.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you
That's-
think about uniforms in extant? Oh, I remember them talking about the fact that they couldn't find trousers that looked right, but that's most of what I want. That's not. Thank you.
Yeah, that's cool.
So what's your favorite uniform of all the branches? With the exception of the boat cape. The boat cape wins. Have you ever seen a boat cape?
I'm not sure I know what a boat cape
You
is.
were reading too much Terminal Lance.
Well, at where my wife works, there is one senior NCO who wears the boat cape to the ball. It's an opera cape in the same colors as the dress blues, and it looks stunning. And yes, I have seen that one in Terminal Lance. And
It's
the
an opera as
reason
part of the uniform.
the reason nobody else has them is because I
They're
looked,
really
they're about
expensive.
$800
Yeah.
for a cape.
Yeah, for something you're gonna wear once a year.
Right.
Yeah.
But aside from the boat cape, what's your favorite of all the branches, and what's your least favorite of your branch? Because we don't want to. There's enough opportunity for throwing stones. We're not going to start with that.
So I'll start because, oh my God, when I came to the Air Force, it was not too long after they had switched over to the business style dress that General McPeak had instituted, trying to pattern it on the Navy jacket, but failed. And it was just the most ill-fitting hybrid version of a business code. You know, it's trying to be military, but also trying to look corporate, and it was terrible. And when they first brought it on, they wanted to do just Navy rank on the sleeves instead of epaulets and stuff. And for those of us in training, all we had was the National Defense ribbon. We had just one little ribbon up here, and then you had nothing on the sleeves. So it's like airline pilot, Air Force officer, airline pilot, Air Force officer. And my dad's Air Force, so I grew up seeing him in the old four-pocket style jackets.
Those are pretty good looking.
That's still my favorite, I think. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but I think those four
Yeah.
pocket look really, really good.
Nostalgia is totally legit as a motivation.
But if I had to go with modern, I'd say the Navy dress uniform, because that jacket, it struck the right balance between military and corporate.
Which is funny because the Marines think, balance?
What is
Why
this
would-
balance thing? of
Why
what
would
you
we
speak?
want to look corporate?
Yeah. Tangent.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, for Army, pinks and greens all the way. I'm so happy they brought them back. Again, they had this awesome marketing opportunity with Captain America coming out, and they totally let it slide for 10 years. They should have jumped on that right away.
And they kept on the nostalgia, they brought back Be All You Can Be.
Yes, I will
Which is
freely
so much
admit
better than Army
that
of
when
One.
that
Yes.
fucking advertisement came out, I was excited because Be All You Can Be. That's what when my mom and dad served. That's what it was, and I remember those commercials like word for word, and I've showed them to my kids. So I'm excited that came back. Worst is the old greens. Oh God. They were so
Yeah,
bad.
they were.
It was a bus driver uniform. You looked like you were there to check people's tickets and
Well, and imagine, I went from the Marine Corps to that,
yeah, I'm sorry.
and it was like, oh my God.
I have a set of
Every
those.
time I put
So-
them on.
So there's an interesting study, right? Or not study, but an interesting theory. So they adopted the old greens in the 50s. Now at the time, all the general officers who had been looking fit and trim in their pinks and greens during World War II were now not so tight, if you know what I mean. So they went for a more corporate style, which was far more loose and drapey and baggy and far more effective at hiding their guts. And they adopted that in the 50s, and it basically was that until they finally got rid of them, I think, in 2009. Those were awful. They are so bad. I have my set, and I can't even burn them because they are just this horrible polyester. It would probably like cause cancer or kill you or something.
I was
So,
looking at it.
the old greens
Although
are
after
fine.
burn pits,
Yes.
Well, they had one in between, didn't they? They went
Oh,
back
we
to
had the blues.
the blues.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of the old, almost
Yeah,
like
those,
1800s
so
cavalry.
those are still, yeah, and those are still around. Those are still like the pinks and greens are the class Bs, the class As, the higher tier are those, the blues. They're okay. It just doesn't have this nostalgia for me. I was never a Cav guy.
the
Yeah, I
first
just-
time I saw the Army Whites, I didn't know they existed.
Yeah.
My brother went to the Naval Academy, and at his graduation, General Schwarzkopf spoke in Army Whites, and I didn't even know that was possible. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're pointing to me now.
Yeah.
I don't really have an opinion on worst. I mean, yeah, Marine dress blues look pretty doggone awesome. And B's and C's, the dark greens, I thought looked good too. I can't say I had a least favorite, but again, I've been out for 30 years and things have changed. PT uniforms are stupid, having to wear the visibility belts. I mean, I think everybody can agree on that. Those need to die.
Safety belt, save lives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're going out on an infantry combat patrol in hostile territory. Make sure you wear your belt. No.
The sad thing was there were a lot of senior NCOs in Iraq and Afghanistan who had nothing better to do than walk around on a fob and yell at guys for walking around without that stuff. And that was and has been a problem in the military, regardless of branch, of the undercutting of NCOs and their role, and basically you disempower them so then they go find stupid shit to go and do. I've seen them telling soldiers to trim grass with scissors in Iraq because they had nothing better to do.
Yeah, I don't miss those kind of
Yeah, and
games.
that's
I
one of
won't use
those.
what the term we called it, but those kind of games. Yeah, well, there was one thing, and I don't know if this is still the case because again I've been out for a while now, but with the Marines that I thought was kind of ridiculous in this, that we didn't have subdued insignia for camo in the field.
Right.
So especially officers, you know, they got all that glittery stuff on their collars when you need to not have glittery, shiny stuff.
On the other hand, you could tell who the officers were when you were not in the combat
Yeah, it
zone,
made that part
as
easier.
opposed to the
Yeah.
Army.
So, again, with the rank on the collar, the Army, we got it here on the chest, which A is a great sniper target. But B, it leads to a lot of problems when you're dealing with other branches. And I supported the Marines in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And it leads to some really awkward situations when you're talking to a female officer and you're trying to find her rank and you're staring at her chest. Ma'am, no, I'm not trying to, I'm trying to figure out what rank you
Besides
are.
which you're in BDUs, I couldn't tell anyway.
Yeah, well, used to be in the Army, you had one collar had your rank and the other collar had your branch. And it was fantastic because then you couldn't hide what you were. When you're looking for the intel guy, he's got his little intel symbol. When you're looking for the medic, they've got the yeah. So you knew and you had some pride in your branch because you had to, because you were wearing it. I miss that, and granted, I have a set of BDUs, but I only wore them for like a year. But that was, if we're gonna talk uniform shit we hate, that little change.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I started in the pickle suit.
Very,
And then got BDUs.
very similar story. Favorite uniform, and there's uniforms that look much, much better, but my favorite uniform is still the Navy Cracker Jacks, the blue, the enlisted
Yeah.
dress blue. Just because there's so much history there,
Mm-hmm.
including, and if you've never been in the Navy, you might not know this, the trousers on the Navy Cracker Jacks, there is no fly. It's 13 buttons. So when you see a bunch of Navy guys out drinking, and one of them has to go to the bathroom, it's a comedy. Buttons may go flying. My least favorite is the Navy khakis with the Eisenhower jackets. And the reason is there's no rank insignia on that. So you don't know whether it's a chief or an officer. And the only thing worse than not saluting an officer is saluting a chief.
Yeah.
And if you're not in the Navy, how many times have you saluted a chief because they wear all this shiny shit?
Yep.
And
Oh,
you
yeah.
have no idea what any of that means.
I got in trouble. We were in dry dock, so everybody's wearing hard hats. So that's the only insignia you got if they're wearing the Eisenhower jacket. So it was an officer, it was a lieutenant commander, and he had his hard hat on. He had his rank insignia on the hard hat, but he had his safety goggles. Instead of wearing them, he had them on top of it. There was no sign of rank.
PPE.
And I'm looking, trying to figure out. And he says, "What? You don't salute officers anymore?" And you may not believe this, but when I was younger, I was a little bit of a smartass.
What?
I know it's hard to
So
believe.
you're a rarity in the service.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I said, "I do when I can see their rank and it's not covered by their PPE, sir." Boom.
Yeah.
It's a gentle reminder to put your freaking eyeballs on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll throw out something here from the government civilian perspective, and I don't know if this is an Air Force, Space Force thing, or if the other services have it as well. But most of the time now, at least in a headquarters staff type setting, they'll still wear the OCPs every day, and they'll, the blues, the service dress, whatever. Yeah, that's for special, very very special occasions like change of command, pinning on, things like that. I think the Pentagon is still on like 3 or 4 days a week they wear OCPs, and then 1 day a week they wear the service dress. So it doesn't matter what meeting you're in. It doesn't matter who's the senior officer at the meeting. Most of them are wearing the OCPs. Okay, I get it. They're comfortable, and you look like a warrior in them, even though you're in a staff position.
Combat pajamas.
Yeah, but us civilians are,
Wearing a
if it's
suit and tie.
yeah, if it's a senior level meeting, you're expected to be in a suit and tie. Wait a minute, you're in your undress uniform, and I have to dress up? Wait, why?
So one thing, and this is rumint only, rumor intelligence for those of you who don't know. With the Army bringing back the pinks and greens, the rumint is that we're going to go to, whenever we're in garrison, we wear the pinks and greens. And whenever you're in the field is when you wear the OCP. And I have mixed feelings about it. One, because it's a pain in the ass, you're wearing it all the time. On the other hand, it brings back a lot of that pride and that sense of purpose and the fuck, I have to make sure everything looks good instead of I pick it up off the floor, throw it on, come out of the barracks, and go to work. So I think, as you said, it brings a lot of that pride and sense of purpose and professionalism back that we have kind of lost and filed off on over the past 20 years of, well, we're fighting a war to win, and et cetera.
Well, to win is optional.
Yeah.
We have to find
So
a win and-
let's talk briefly. We have a few minutes left. What things about the uniforms, not the uniforms themselves, but the way they make you wear them, is irritating? For me, it was a Marine Corps thing. Sleeves go up on a specific date.
Yeah.
Sleeves go down on a specific date. Marine Corps wide. So if you're in,
Alaska.
I was at H&S Company Minus in New Orleans on the lakefront. Our spring starts well before April, and we don't really have winter. So in October, I was not ready to put my sleeves back down.
Yeah, sleeves.
So what kind of thing like that?
That just takes me back to the senior NCOs who have been disempowered and have nothing better to do than chase people around for minor uniform differences. I've been at PT in Colorado in January, which was a very, very brisk -10. And one guy had forgotten his PT pants. So it was a battalion fun run, and the battalion sergeant major tells everyone to take their pants off so that we can all look uniform with Private Snuffy who had forgotten his pants. So we did it, and we did the run, and it was miserable, and thankfully no one got frostbite or anything, but that kind of thing, that can be really, really annoying. And similarly, not with uniforms, but with time, the sergeant major says we're doing a fun run at 6:30. So the first sergeants, the company first sergeants say, all right, Sergeant Major wants us out there at 6:30. We're going to go ahead and have everyone out there at 6:15 for roll call. Platoon sergeants go, first sergeants want us out there at 6:15. I want every swinging body out there at 05:45 because Snuffy was late last week.
And the
Squad leader goes, they want us out there at 5:45. I want full accountability at 05 because Snuffy, you were late. And then the team leaders go, well, you heard him. We got to be out there at 4:30. So you get out there at 4:30 in the morning, and you stand there, and you do a formation, and then you go back to standing there until 6:30 when you have the fun run. So 2 hours wasted because,
Or the fun run gets canceled.
yes, yeah.
No, that is precisely how it works. He is not exaggerating. That turd rolls downhill and it just gets bigger and bigger as it rolls. The next thing you know, you're showing up 2 hours early
So
for a formation and just standing around.
as a
picking
PL,
belly button.
I chewed out my acting platoon sergeant and my 2 squad leaders the first time they did that shit, and I told them, when does the sergeant major want us there? We are there 15 minutes before that and not a fucking minute sooner. And I fought them both on it. Yeah. My guys were very happy. My company commander and first sergeant both chewed my ass out later because I wasn't standing there with them in the other platoons, but all our guys were there. So,
And you were
learned how to
actually
sleep
sitting there
standing
laughing
up,
at
so.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add to what you said. The sleeves up, sleeves down thing. They make that decision up in Quantico. I was stationed down in Beaufort where it's almost as hot and humid as New Orleans.
Yep.
We could have been sleeves up all year.
One of the stupidest, this will take me back to the old woodland ABUs. And so you're in woodland combat uniform out in the field, or in my case in the missile field, where you're crawling around equipment part of the time and checking stuff, and there's grease and fluids and everything everywhere. And you're expected to have polished boots. It's like, and of course the Army guys have it even worse, right? It's like, why? Why do we polish boots when we know we're going to be crawling around, getting everything dirty, torn up, ripped up? was so happy when the Air Force made the decision to switch over to the rough side out boots.
Don't all the
I
don't all
miss-
the branches do
I
that?
I
miss
confess
the-
that I'm disappointed in
I
that
don't
change.
I'm gonna go the other way. I do agree if you're doing work of some kind, having polished boots isn't necessarily vital, but I do think having that thing that you have to take care of on your uniform, and having to actually concentrate about it instead of throw on your combat pajamas and show up at the office is a good thing.
Well, I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, the low quarter shoes for dress uniform, yeah, definitely those need to be polished and taken care of. And of course, they had to stop the slide because then once people were starting wearing the rough side out boots, they would clean them
Yeah.
if they got stuff on them. And they were designed to be clean. People just weren't educated on that. You just need a little a washcloth, a little soap and water, and you can get most of it off. In certain cases, a lot of times on the flight line, there's hot stuff there, and you can scorch the boot. And unfortunately, then the only thing you can do is replace it. And for a while there, they had a problem getting enough boots of the right size in the shop. So yeah, there was a
huge logistic problem when
Yeah.
they switched over boots, and then the Army had their $1 billion uniform, oopsie, in the ACUs.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that was
Which-
that great pattern
if you-
camos.
It's awful. If you pay attention to retiring sergeant majors, the sergeant major who was on the board who selected those, and the general who was on the board who selected those, both retired, and within 6 months we had the OCPs. I'm not going to say that those two people had enough influence to keep them around that long, but they did. Yeah, the ACUs were awful. Thank
They
God
played
they're
too
gone.
much money.
They were
And-
kind of anti-camouflage, weren't they, in
and
the
that's-
desert? Didn't they
so-
highlight you?
Yeah, so they highlighted the study that they did at the time, where in the study someone said that black does not occur naturally in nature. They read that as don't have dark colors in your uniform because that doesn't occur in nature. That's not what the study said. It said pure black does not occur naturally in nature. So they ran it through a filter and they pulled out all of the dark colors, and you got this kind of crappy gray green. It's awful.
So we're at time.
Rich didn't go.
Okay, I'll go really, really quick. Uniforms didn't bother me because Navy uniforms, particularly for enlisted, are designed to be practical. Why do we wear bell bottoms? So you can roll those up while you're swabbing a deck.
I thought it was for disco.
Do what?
I thought it was for disco.
That's because you're in the Army. So, but what did get me, I'd just gotten out of boot camp, I was going through training, and Navy had a tradition, we were the only service that was allowed to have a full beard. And it was in '84, I was just coming out, and I was about to get my beard chit to grow my first beard at 22 years old. And they said, hey, we have this whole thing called NBC warfare now. No more beards.
So Bernie guys, they ruin it for everyone.
So that's it, I went real quick.
Thank you. So, thank you for coming. One more time, I'll ask you to say where to find you, and I will close with the notion that we argue among ourselves, but don't y'all argue with us.
Amen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's fights within the family, and then there's fights outside the family, and that's where stuff gets real.
Yeah. So, Rich, where do we find you?
Rich Hailey, richhaley.com. I'm also on Facebook, and I have my one story published in Talents and Talismans 2, which is available from New Mythology Press, part of the Chris Kennedy Publishing family.
Mike Morton, my first novel here, Silent Violence, is out and available on Amazon, as are the rest of the anthologies that I'm in, from Joint Task Force 13, Three Ravens, Misfits, and Magic, and a few other things can be found on Amazon. Got flyers up here if you want a QR code, or you just look me up on Facebook, Michael Morton, or I'm also at the Command Post.
I'm Patrick Chiles, and my latest Escape Orbit, along with my other books with Baen, can be found on Baen.com, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target, anywhere fine books are sold, it's there. Again, it'll be available April 4th online. My website's thechilesfiles.com. Excuse me, just chilesfiles.com, not the. And social media, it's Patrick Chiles on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
I'm Kal Spriggs. My website is kalspriggs.com. As far as books, I've got my Amazon best-selling Balor's Child series, and I just released the 4th book of my epic fantasy, military fantasy series, Sorcerers in the Black Fortress, and that came out on Friday.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Please salute our panel members, and y'all have a good day.
Thank you for your service.
So just